I'm now recording, so welcome to the CHAOSS weekly meeting. So this is, those of you that are new, this is just kind of an informal meeting where we bring up ideas, have meet new people. We do have a more formal meeting on the first Tuesday of every month where we kind of walk through the working groups and all of the software and all that kind of stuff. So I've posted the minutes for everybody. I know that we're joined by Naritzi today, who's from GitLab, and gosh, senior open source strategist at GitLab. Did I get that right? Something like that?
Senior open source program manager. So
okay,
I run the GitLab for open source program.
Okay. Well, I know that you only have a half hour today, and I think you've talked to Georg just kind of about where we're at, just kind of thinking about GitHub and GitLab and how that can play a part perhaps in the project. And that it sounded like you also had some other interests that you had chatted about with Georg, and maybe you can talk about those. So
yeah, sure. So I think that this also started, so we just met at Scale, and I'm also part of the GNOME Foundation. And so I was actually pretty unfamiliar with the CHAOSS project before Scale. So I sat in on a talk and got to see some of the cool stuff that Baturja is working on for dashboards for community health metrics, and I guess just CHAOSS project in general.
yeah.
So I know that GNOME has been looking for something like that for a long time, and was hoping that GitLab would somehow integrate it into the product for the community edition. And so we're just in beginning stages of talking about it. But, you know, providing my position here is about helping to provide more value to our open source projects so that, you know, GitLab is a great tool for lots of different types of open source orgs. So I would like to evaluate, you know, any kind of integration that we could have. So that's that side. And then I was also just interested in getting to know some more people here, you know, who are part of the CHAOSS project, and see if anybody else has any other questions for me as we start to evaluate. I see my role here as helping you get the information you need to make a good decision that'll be best for your project.
Cool. So I guess looking at Georg's, hello Georg, looking at Georg's email from yesterday, it was kind of a brief overview with GNOME. I don't think I totally followed what GNOME is looking to do or how GitLab is associated, kind of how these parts are all connected, I guess.
Yeah, so we haven't had our first meeting yet. We just literally like met at a stand and said, whoa, we are in need of measuring the health of our community and being more data driven in general around various decision-making processes. So it's just super initial talks. And
Gotcha.
I know that you stayed longer with Shri and with Sean. So do you have anything else to add about the details?
So the idea that we were talking about is to figure out what the metrics are that GNOME is interested in, building out a platform and visualizations for those metrics, and then report that also back out, not just in GNOME, but also to CHAOSS, and get maybe KDE and other foundations involved to maybe put together a package of foundation metrics or something along those lines. It's still in early stages, and our meeting is on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. And if anyone wants to join that call, you're welcome to join. I can add you to the invite. So
is the kind of the logic about talking to foundations and getting insight on the projects that they broker, that are kind of under the foundation?
I think it's just that right now at GNOME, we don't have a great way of measuring anything beyond like some contributions, but around diversity and inclusion, like that's an initiative that we just started last year and we haven't been really measuring that. So there are a lot of things that we just don't have the tools in place right now to measure. So the idea of having dashboards and of first figuring out what it is that we want to measure would be really important.
Okay, gotcha. And so Georg, how does that tie in with the foundation view? Like I get it on the project level, like providing insight at the project level. So what's the relationship with other foundations? So like if I think about the Linux Foundation, right? They host whatever, 200 some odd projects. So is it to give the Linux Foundation information on the projects that they're brokering, or is it to provide the projects that they broker the ability to create dashboards? Does that make sense?
So the way that I understood this from our conversation, and maybe Noritzi has a different perspective, is that one outcome could be a package of these are the metrics that you can look at, why you want to look at them. These are the tools that you can use, here are the visualizations.
Yeah.
And the foundation can start using that. Now, I don't think we talked about whether this is at the foundation level or whether this is for the individual projects of the foundation, just that GNOME is interested in this, and maybe there's interest in KDE, and maybe there are other foundations also that are interested in this kind of package.
Okay.
So my understanding is that it's at like the GNOME Foundation level, that it's a step before we talk about rolling it out to sub-projects.
I see.
Yeah, and to my well, I actually don't know for sure what KDE does, but I could see how this would be something that they would be very interested to, again, from that foundation level perspective.
Okay. Personally, I know that a lot of, whether they're open source foundations or say, even sometimes grant agencies that broker a bunch of open source projects or at least fund those projects, they have an interest in kind of that higher level as to how the projects are performing and what they look like over time. So from a granting perspective, obviously you don't want to be funding projects that just kind of fail over the course of a year. So just being able to give those types of agencies insight as well. So that sounds kind of similar here. And there's been a lot of interest in this for a long time. And we've never really, I don't think, taken that on.
Yeah, I think, like Matt, I think the point you're bringing up, I mean, maybe it's, I mean, this is a bigger topic. It's, I mean, not just for a foundation, maybe this is, you know, this makes, I mean, we'll have to make our, you know, releases or our outputs more consumable so people can kind of easily figure it out. Because, I mean, like you said, like what GNOME or KDE needs is probably not going to be a whole lot different than a lot of the projects under the LF or anybody else, right? Or UN agencies or whoever's consuming it. But
yep, they just want to see how they're doing, kind of even at a high level.
Right.
If they're
I mean, here are the metrics. I mean, if you're interested in DNI, like here's where to find them, and here's what you need to sort of factor in. And I think, yeah, we just need to make it, I guess, more easily consumable.
Yep, I think that's a great idea. And I would love to see that move forward.
Yeah, maybe after this initial meeting, we'll make a proposal to have a CHAOSS working group for this. Or
I saw that.
I would like to tie this more strongly. I would like to tie this more strongly into the work of CHAOSS.
Yeah, it would be a slightly different working group because it's a working group that looks to assemble the metrics in a way that's meaningful for a particular stakeholder or group of stakeholders, which is not how the working groups are currently assembled, which I don't think is a huge problem, but okay. Just so you know, if you're new on the call, the way the working groups are assembled is we have 5 working groups in the CHAOSS project. So they're around things like risk is one of the working groups, diversity and inclusion is one of the working groups, value, common, and evolution. And those working groups assemble metrics kind of in a systematic way that help reveal insights with respect to, say, diversity and inclusion, or reveal insights with respect to the evolution of a project. But the metrics within those working groups aren't necessarily assembled in a way that's specifically meaningful for a set of stakeholders. The assemblage of those has kind of been done on a one-to-one basis. So people can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of how I see it. So cool. That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we were talking about is how this might be integrated with GitLab. And by that, I don't mean like the CHAOSS project necessarily moving over to CHAOSS, but Jorg, do you know a little bit more about what we were talking about there too, as like part of, yeah, just the integration of GitLab?
So there was some interest, and we talked about this last week here on the call also, to maybe work with GitLab to get some of the metrics that we have defined and make them available to GitLab users. And so take the work that we have done on defining metrics, and I don't know how to get them into GitLab.com, or whether it is having a stronger integration with our tools. I don't know exactly how we're going to do this.
Okay, and remind me, is there an open issue somewhere on GitLab.com, or has this all just been conversations? Okay, so, okay.
It's all been conversation so far. So Sala, you have a question?
Yeah, so it's interesting because as we're talking about integration, every time you know, we start saying, how are we going to take some pieces of information or some forms and move them into different platforms? We are talking about web platforms most likely. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there is a battle of opinions about how do you make components for the web. And basically there's the, you know, reality of React being the popular opinion, versus web components being the opinion that is everywhere if you want to use it. Mm-hmm. And so if we're talking about how do we get fixtures of particular function that are, you know, coupled to the CHAOSS, you know, platforms or platform, and can actually integrate, I think going the custom elements or the web components, you know, direction is the safer bet. It basically has proven successful in sites like GitHub, for instance. And it does allow people to, you know, kind of really remove any conflicts with frameworks. You know, even React will support web components. It doesn't like them because, you know, but it works with them. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sala. Right, so I think that listening to Georg and Sala, I think a lot of the hope is that with GitLab providing a way to upstream work, that we could find a way to get the work that's being done in CHAOSS through normal channels, through standard contributions, to start seeing some of that work in the GitLab platform. Mm-hmm. That's available for public use. That's kind of how I'm reading this, and of course, not asking for any shortcuts. Yeah. But doing
yeah, I think I mentioned this last week too. I mean, you know, contribution is always welcome, but just with the caveat that most of our code's in Ruby, so yeah, there might be some challenges there. I mean, if you're a good programmer, I think that's probably not a huge obstacle, but just a quick FYI, so people, I mean, if you're more comfortable with Python, so you might have that on-ramp challenge.
But it's a path. It's at least a path.
Yeah.
It's a path.
Right. Yeah.
Those contributions.
Right.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt. I
Sure.
still have my hand raised because I forgot. There's an important distinction between what you do in the backend. The backend, today you can run any backend. I mean, Java is back, right? So Docker and like deploying VMs means that your backend code can stay in whatever it needs to be in. And what you're really, the ambassador that goes everywhere today is front end code that basically just has a token and knows where the backend is. So if you're talking about making this user facing, then we are really just talking about how are you going to put the interface element, the UI element, that faces the user, and you're not really talking about changing backend technology, just scaling it, and definitely GitLab scales a lot of things, right? So I mean, from the backend, that does solve the problem, but front end wise, you don't want to couple further. You want to decouple in order for you to be able to be as portable as possible. So there wouldn't be a need for GitLab's front end to do anything other than import a custom element as a JavaScript module. And that custom element would basically just take a part of the web page, and it will contain all the logic encapsulated away from everything else.
Okay. I tried to take some notes, so if you can take a look and make sure that I got the summary of that, I think it'd be great to also file an actual ticket on GitLab that we can involve you all in, and we can have more of the technical discussion there too.
Yep.
So that people can weigh in from engineering and product.
I think somebody had put in the notes to open a ticket.
I did that. Or maybe before tomorrow? Okay, cool. Yep.
Yep, thank you.
But that's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Cool. And then I think in terms of kind of the other parallel discussion that's going on with GitHub and GitLab, because as you know, we're currently located on GitHub. Honestly, I think from my perspective, the conversation has been moving forward quite positively. I think there's kind of the usual suspect of questions. It's these, it's basically, we're used to working this way, what's going to change? And so I think that's a normal set of questions. I think another set of questions that has been coming up is with respect to deployment and how that deployment or the change might look. Like, is it all at once? Is it over time? Kind of thing. So trying to find, trying to get comfortable with that. I've personally expressed my own views, which I think is the CHAOSS project lives in mostly one place or the other, just for consistency's sake for the project. So anyway, I don't know if other people have comments on this. Again, personally, to me, it's been moving forward in a very positive way. Not that GitLab is more positive than GitHub, but I just think the conversation has been very positive and constructive over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if people have other thoughts on this. That's just been my take. Okay.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that moving would solve an immediate issue for the Grimoire Lab project with the different modules and centralizing all of the issues into one place and being able to use the group structure that GitLab has. I was also thinking that this might be helpful for the metrics working groups. If we can maybe, as we are thinking about moving, think about how we can use GitLab features to improve our workflows in the metrics working groups, because I think there's potential here. And then the concern from Sean was about switching in the middle of Outreachy and Google Summer of
Which
Code
is fair.
over the summer. So maybe I was thinking that we can do maybe a phased approach where if Grimoire Lab is the one that really wants to move, they can start exploring the features, we can learn about GitLab, and then we move everything else after we have some experience. That's a thought I had.
Yeah, I think the phased approach has come up a couple times, and I'm okay with that. I guess one of the questions that I have is, at some point as a community, we're going to have to say yes or no. And so where does that yes or no occur? Is it tomorrow? Is it at the board meeting? Is it, you know what I
I
mean?
mean, we don't have the software, because, yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing too, because when we started, we thought about having, I mean, like, I think the terminology we used was a committee, like a software committee, groups will get together and sort of decide, because, I mean, I think as long as the technical community is okay, I think the board, I don't know if people have objections. Like, one group that we haven't heard from is actually Craigit. Like, do they even have a repo on GitHub right now? Or I don't know where their software lives.
They have a GitHub repo, but it's not under the CHAOSS org.
Really? Okay. So
Ray,
we
what are your
probably
thoughts
need,
on bringing this to
yeah,
the
I don't
board?
know if that group cares or not, but
Was your thought to bring it to the board, Ray? Because I'd like to get closure on this one way or the other, personally.
but at the board meeting, we're like, what would the board decide? Like, I don't know if you have all the decisions or questions from the technical communities like answered yet. That's sort of
So,
how I feel, but
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I have a suggestion because I was there, I was on the board when the GNOME Foundation decided to move to GitLab. And the way that they did it was they created a written proposal and kind of some research on the different options, and, you know, like gave their reasons for the recommendation, and then had a period where they let people weigh in through the mailing lists. And then they tried to answer any questions that were raised around, or like concerns. And then after that, once a certain time had been reached, then they brought it up to the board, and then the board gave the formal approval to move forward. So it might be a model to follow here too.
Who was the group that put together that document? Was it just a self-assembled group?
It was somebody who took it on as like the lead. He was a GNOME maintainer, and he was just interested in this
I
area.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of a individual who had an interest.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And he worked with the sysadmin team. So anybody who's doing any kind of sysadmin team for CHAOSS or any sysadmin work. And then I think he also tried to get the opinions from some of the, I guess what would map to working groups here, just to make sure that there's somebody involved to weigh in early on feedback. And then they together kind of put forth the proposal to the wider community.
Yeah, that makes good sense. It's a nice open way of doing it as well. It doesn't just live in these calls.
Yeah.
And we do have a thread on the mailing list that's now a month old where we have been discussing this.
Yeah.
So I think we're almost partway there. We just haven't said, looks like we're moving unless someone objects. So maybe we need to put that on the mailing list.
Yeah.
What do you think about making a document, Georg? I'm not looking at you to make the document, but something that is a little bit more structured. That's all.
Yeah, I like the idea of having everything in one centralized document. And I was just looking at the governance document that we have for the board. And the board is to coordinate everything, and because this move would affect all working groups and all committees, I think it's the right thing to do to bring it up to the board.
Okay, then my at least initial thought is that Georg, maybe you and I can kind of work on a document that summarizes things to date. Have it open, just share it again for public comment and circulate it with the working groups and the, like Augur and Grimoire Lab. And then we could bring it to the board in, I'm guessing we'll have another meeting in June.
We could also do it over the mailing list.
We could just do it over the mailing list. So that would make sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's what we did too, where we had initial discussions among the board, like some back and forth. And then during one of our meetings, we just had like the official vote just so that it went through.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
I have to hop off in like a couple of minutes. Does anybody have any last questions or anything?
Oh, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming.
So nice to meet you all. So
Yes, likewise.
rub you
Okay,
soon.
cool.
All right, bye everybody.
I
Bye.
have one more question.
Oh, yes.
And that is with regards to the quotas for the runners.
Yes.
If we do move, right now we are using a lot of automation for CDCI in Travis. And if we move, there was some concern around limitations in GitLab.
Yeah.
We don't
So-
have to solve it right now.
Right. So what I would suggest is I'd love to get not involved in drafting the document, but with a proposal or whatever. I can help you find any outstanding questions that you have and can help give input from the GitLab side into how the migration would work and all that.
Perfect.
Okay.
And also, Georg, I don't think the minutes like translate one-to-one if you move from one tool to another. I mean, if you move to a different environment, you may need less minutes because it's faster, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So just as an FYI, that's what I've seen from projects moving to different like a CI tools. For whatever reason, based on their environment, it just works faster when they move to different CI or vice versa. So like even if we have like a data on for Grimoire Lab, it takes like 500 CI minutes on that particular tool. I don't think that necessarily translates to same exact minutes if you move to a different one. So that's what I've seen before.
Yeah, no, that's a good caution.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. That was, again, nice constructive discussion. Seems to be that way every time on this. Okay, so I had a thing that I wanted to bring up. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up? I had 2 items down there at the bottom. So one was last week, Sean and I just received a grant from Mozilla to support the work that we're doing. I know, yeah. So the way that, right, for academics, the way that we operate here is we obviously have our university job, but then we go out and seek grant dollars to support students and to support our travel and those kind of things, right? So that's kind of why we seek those grants. And so we just received a Mozilla Track 2 award last week. And one of the things that is part of the award is it's just kind of continuing to do what we do, but also using some of the dollars to travel to conferences, right? Kind of, so like normal travel to conferences, but also to assist people in traveling to conferences so that we can explicitly talk about D&I related work. So for example, the badging program, or trying to help event organizers with D&I event metrics. So, you know, taking some of the dollars that come from Mozilla and using those dollars to actually attend the conferences to help kind of do this work, not just attend and talk about it, but actually help with organizers or attendees to do that work. And what I'm hoping to bring to CHAOSS is that that with these dollars we could do some matching from organizations that are not necessarily involved in the CHAOSS project, but would have an interest in kind of moving these efforts forward. Right, so part of the work that we do is not just coming up with the metrics, but really trying to get them into practice. And sometimes this practice requires us getting out there and doing the work. So I'm floating the idea here of matching, kind of like if you listen to public radio, you know, like the matching hour. I'll bring $1 and we can get another $1. So, you know, it unlocks something. So I don't know if people listen to public radio, number one, and you have any idea what I'm talking about, or two, if you do listen to public radio, what you think about kind of matching these dollars that are coming from Mozilla and then through Sean and myself. So thoughts that people have? I would have to articulate what those dollars are being used for, but I just thought I'd bring it here first. And if you speak up and you work at a company, that doesn't mean that you are matching the dollars. So don't worry. I don't work that way. So that's not how I would take that. The idea is just to write exactly as Georg's writing. I think Georg, to double the funds to do this work. And these matching dollars would go into, not me, but they'd go into Community Bridge. Right, so I would take the dollars that I have, and I don't know if I would donate them to Community Bridge or just kind of keep them here, but then the matching dollars would go into Community Bridge. Silence good, silence bad.
Yeah, I think I've seen this with other open source foundations or projects where we can put out a call, say all donations made during the next month will be matched. And so for every donation that comes in through Community Bridge, you just make a matching donation from your Mozilla funds up to that amount. Something like that, maybe?
Yeah, I could probably do that. I don't know if I can get, just logistically, if I can get university dollars into Community Bridge. Universities might be like, that makes no sense to me. But it would be matched kind of, I get your point. That if you make a donation to Community Bridge to do this effort, that we would match funds. I would have to figure out a way to signal that.
Yeah, would be nice to have all of that go through Community Bridge if we can make it work, because that creates nice transparency around the dollars.
I'm thinking of my university.
Quick question about Community Bridge. Is there pledged versus donated? Because if there's pledged, when you get money that goes into Community Bridge, you can pledge by the authority of the university the equal amount and say, you know, this is the pledged amount. And then this way it's visible in Community Bridge. I don't know if they have that feature, but it would make sense.
That like I would put out a pledge by saying if we can hit whatever $5,000, then
yeah, there's a pledge for another 5,000 that doesn't go into Community Bridge immediately if that's bureaucratically impossible, but would be a pledge that is public, visible, and you know, expensed as it gets expensed.
We can maybe talk to the product team at the LF, but my gut feeling is they are not gonna have that. At least I have not seen this feature, and my understanding is they're not adding new features to the current platform because they're working on a new platform.
When is the new platform coming into being, or is it already in?
I was thinking they might announce it at the member summit, but that's not happening.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, there's right now there's only donate button. There's no pledge.
Yeah, maybe they have time now to put it in the new one. So
I think it's certainly worth a question, or ways that we could signal that. And to be clear too on this, like the money we would pledge, this isn't just for the team that is here. I mean, this was for everybody to take. So for the folks that are in the D&I working group and making those efforts, this would be a way to have access to some of those dollars, under the somewhat condition that you talk about the program with the event organizers. So this isn't just a way for me to double my money. It's a way to increase the outreach of the CHAOSS project. I think hopefully all of you
I
trust
guess
me.
just there in that sentence was a little bit unintended, because he said this is not just a way to double my money.
It's not to double my money. It's a way.
Because I heard it very literal. I'm sorry, I had one of my moments there.
Cool. All right, it seems like this is reasonable for folks. I will start following through on this. If anybody has objections, you can let me know. I guess on Google Summer of Code and Outreachy, if you haven't noticed, there have been a few students who have started to express interest in Google Summer of Code and Outreachy, which is great. It's a little hard to keep track of at the moment, just because there are so many. So kind of doing my best. I don't know, on the Grimoire Lab side of things, have things been pretty busy for you as well?
Yeah, I see some interest. I'm following all of the notifications, and yeah, we have a few comments every day on the issues and questions. I'm not keeping exactly track of who these people are. I just see the activity.
Yeah, I'm keeping less track. I think the volume is a lot higher. I think with Google Summer of Code, I think that project continues to go up, and then Outreachy, I think I've seen probably, I don't know, maybe 10 students that were accepted to Outreachy who have expressed interest in a variety of different things. So all good there, I think. It was just mostly the update there.
Excuse me, hello. Do we have a means of tracking the students to see like the weekly activities?
The names of all of the students, like Google Summer of Code and Outreachy?
Yeah, so we can also keep track of the activities.
I could try to assemble them. So I could give it a shot. I think it's probably worth the effort just to kind of see how many people have expressed interest. So Armstrong, I haven't done it yet, but I think that's a good suggestion.
So can I pile on that one other thing?
Sure.
I think seeing that people are coming for our dashboards, we kind of want to have a dashboard about people who are interning, and the timelines, and yeah, I'm going to try to not talk about the level of stress I have, but yeah, like I kind of like, if there was a dashboard that says, okay, you will expect unexpected emails, then you will be there for those emails. Like, yeah, for someone like me, it was like, okay, email, and then next week another email, and I'm like, oh my God, like,
yeah, I think that's also totally fair comment. Like I said, this year has seemed, from my perspective, busier and chattier than years past. So I don't think we've needed it in years past. But point well taken, Sala.
I'm actually proposing to help with the dashboard and less with what happens when you look at it, right? So I don't mind organizing things so that the chaos, the real chaos, not the all caps one, that everybody is dealing with is better, and I don't have to deal with chaos. But yeah, I will deal with chaos too if you guys want that. So
totally fair, totally fair. And I think probably doing it now, I mean, if this is if this is an indicator of activity in years going forward, then it's probably better to just take care of it now.
Perfect.
Great.
Well, we always have a list of students who are interested in it. Not during this discussion phase, the community engagement phase, but once they submit their proposals, we ask them to add their name to our list of interested students. and then we keep track because we have asked them to do like micro tasks, and we need to keep track of their projects and all that. So this interest markdown file in the governance folder or repo, that is where we have been collecting this. So my question is this list that you're talking about assembling a different list? And what value is there in addition to the list we already are planning to have?
Yes, Sala, that question was at you. So.
Oh, okay. So I raised my hand because I didn't know if, because I was talking more about a dashboard of the list, not necessarily where it is. I didn't even know there was a list. But you kind of, let me see if I don't distract us by saying, we have this PR approach to apply for a badge. When a student is accepted and they express interest, can we get them to open a PR that will tentatively add a markdown file that has information that is useful to know about that person, like a form, the badging approach that we proposed, and then this PR doesn't land until they land. You know, they become part of the internship program. I'm not sure if there's like still a screening process or if every interested student is actually going to become involved. So the PR is basically becomes the point of contact through the process, and those PRs being against a particular repo would be a way to tell us, as you know, everyone in the project, how many interested students and how, you know, how each one of them is faring in the process. And yeah, so it's not just a list, but also a you know, a centralized or a single source of knowing where every student is in the process.
So I have a thought on that. We already have issues for all of our project ideas, and we direct interested students to those issues on GitHub. And it's a list of 8 issues or so. What we can do is go to the community dashboard that we have and maybe filter out those issues and see who is contributing to them. So that might be a simple way to see who is how active on those issues, or at least saying hi. It would not get students showing up on the mailing list. It would not get others, but it's a maybe first quick win.
Yeah. So there's a pitfall that I don't know if it's usual or not, but there seems to be that because it's on GitHub, and I like my email visible on GitHub, and so I guess students also, you know, use the well, find a useful point of contact, and you know, as soon as they find an email, they're sending you an email directly. So what I was thinking of structuring the process here was to allow them to know that, you know, this would be the way where they will get feedback. Going outside of that, they might not get an email answered. It might end up in junk mail and so forth. So we just don't want to be like, don't email me. That's not like the right way to do this, but rather to tell them the best way to reach, you know, to connect and get feedback is through a process, and here it is. That was really the goal, I think, here, because when you get a point of contact that is not the conventional one, and at you know, it basically will contain content or questions that may kind of challenge you to answer, and then you may likely not feel inclined to answer that email until you did some digging, and so it kind of throws you off the process in general to manage that kind of rogue communication.
Yep, no, I think that's fair. Let's think about where that would exist. And to Salah's point, I mean, I have been contacted via tagged on GitHub through a direct message, through email directly to myself, through emails to all of the mentors. So there's kind of been 4 different ways that I've been contacted, and it is it's a little unwieldy sometimes.
Yeah, some of them all of the above, like, you know. So like, I mean, not randomly one of the 4, but some really go with like all out, just make sure the message gets there.
Yeah, and I think we have the structure set up in GitHub on how to do the work, like identify the task. There are some associated micro tasks for most of the projects. When you're done with the micro task, issue a pull request. So I think in the past, we've done all of this work. It's that initial funnel to get them to continue to go there meaning the GitHub repository. So I think it's a fair point. Okay, I'm gonna, this is good. In the interest of time, Georg, did you wanna mention something on the podcast?
I do. So there's been good conversation on the mailing list. So thank you everyone who is weighing in. One of the comments that Matt Broberg said is the editing and everything is a lot of overhead. And if we can just pay someone, that is worth every penny. And I was talking also with the folks at the Sustain podcast and their Code Fund podcast network, where they do all of the administrative side of it. We just have to record the podcast, and we only have to maybe find some content and do the research for it to do a good podcast. But then they take the audio, they clean it up, they publish it, they do the artwork, they do everything. And because they already tied into the Code Fund marketing advertising side, they have a pool of advertisers who pay for all of this. They just add at the front and at the end, this podcast is sponsored by our friends at, right now it's Linode, that they have for Sustain. But something along those lines, it's an option. I just wanted to, I will post it also on the mailing list. I just wanted to mention that it's an option for us.
So we would just have a declared sponsor on the podcast? Is that it?
I think the sponsor can change between episodes, but
Okay.
there would be, the key thing is that the Code Fund podcasting network, they take all the pain out of editing it and taking out the amps and pauses and putting together the show notes. They save us a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's the main thing here. And they have a way to finance that. So we don't even have to pay for it.
And the overhead is that at some point during the podcast, it would basically just be an ad. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. That wasn't meant to be a judgment call. It was just a clarity question. What are people's thoughts on that? I did not know that. In theory, it sounds great.
I'm okay with it.
As someone who's done a lot of podcasts in the past, it is super painful to do all of the editing and make them actually sound professional. So I think any solution that we have that helps with that. Yeah, my question, Georg, is the sponsor, is it one of their sponsors that gets a plug and their sponsors pay for this program? Or is it like who would be the sponsor? Do we know that? So
right now they have Linode as a strong sponsor in their program.
Okay.
But
so that's a sponsor of the program, not a sponsor for their particular podcast. That's what I was unclear about.
I think when we enter the negotiations, we have to figure out and get clarity on that. So I
Okay.
don't know for sure.
Okay. What I would say is that we might want some, it would be nice to make sure that we have some input into who the sponsor is, just to make sure that it's not, I don't know. I always worry about not having control over the sponsorships because it could be somebody really terrible.
You don't have to mention any names, but
I don't even have a good example. I could
No, I
just think
know.
of, I mean, there have to be people that could sponsor it that we would be just like, ew,
Evil
no
Corp.
thanks.
Yeah, Evil Corp, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a fair game. Like Evil Corp, I guess. That's yeah.
Totally fair point. Ray, you had a comment too?
No, I mean, it sounded good to me. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything else to add.
One of the things that I was thinking also is for the opening sequence, for the artwork and so on, to launch a call for participation on the mailing list and maybe have a contest and have people submit their ideas. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now. And then I would like to record a pilot episode this month sometime. And the pilot episode would be just with the panel. So I would also like to put together a panel, just who we are, why we do this, how we proceed, so we can figure out the administrative and everything, and then start interviewing maybe next month or so.
Well, if you need a hand, I mean, I'm happy to be part of that. So I only done 1 million interviews in my life.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it as well. I'm also happy to step out if someone else wants to do it because like Matt, I do a lot of this kind of stuff. So if someone else wants an opportunity, I'm happy to not do it too.
Good.
Yeah. I'm thinking about having a set of panelists and then have 2, 3 on every call, but then rotate. So there's no obligation for any one person and the podcast is sustainable beyond 1 or 2 people.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you for kind of pushing this recently, Georg.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's my pet project right now.
Well, now, and you've taken it far enough along now that it has to come to fruition, I'm afraid. So there's no going back now. So
I'm committed. Dang it.
Too late. It's well beyond early idea. So
I can make commentary or like make a joke edition, like ad lib on top of your panel and just make jokes. Like they come very easy for me sometimes, and so I can do it even live.
thank you.
Maybe that's a second podcast.
So in the remaining amount of time, Don, did you want to say anything about Open Source Summit North America? Or does anybody want to talk about this a little bit? So.
No, I mean, I just had a question. I mean, I apologize if I missed the discussion on the mailing thread, because I'm assuming, we haven't heard back from the LF folks on whether they can, provide us. I mean, which is understandable, right? They got bigger buyers they're dealing with. I feel, I mean, regardless of what happens with the facility, should we consider maybe? I mean, it doesn't have to be full day. Have a backup plan of doing this virtually. I don't know what people's thoughts are on it. If we get a room at the convention center or off campus somewhere, if the event still goes on, great. If not, we can, at least we have a day. Because the concern is, I think for the Open Source Summit, they're gonna notify accepted talks on the 23rd-ish timeframe. So people are gonna, if they're still able to travel, they're gonna start making travel plans. So I thought maybe having a sort of a hold on the date might be a good thing. I think we talked about the 25th, after the proper summit is over, but just wanted to see what people had thoughts and.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're probably pretty safe saying that it's going to be the 25th, whatever that day after is.
Yeah.
And I think we can just probably say that it's in Austin and we can nail down the details with the Linux Foundation. I think we just need to I mean, like I outlined in my email, there are a couple things that need to happen. We need to create the page on the website. Does somebody want to volunteer to work with Kevin to do that? Or is there
I'm
anything?
going to talk to him this afternoon, so
Okay.
I'll bring that up.
Perfect. And then we just need to edit those extra couple of fields in the CFP with the, you know, the link to the website and the dates and everything. And then I think we're probably pretty good to start promoting the call for proposals.
Sounds good. Thank you for doing that, Don.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and I got the impression when Kate chimed in with during that discussion that we should be able to get a room. That was kind of the impression I got. Like there was a desire to co-locate.
In the past, Angela has specifically told me that she would like to have projects like us on site on the, you know, on the days that, you know, that all the other things are happening. And she has told me that if anyone tells you no for a room, to escalate it to her.
Okay.
So I really do think that there's probably not going to be any problem with us getting a room. The only problem could be potentially if they don't have enough big rooms and we, you know, we can't get the size of the room that we want from a logistical standpoint, but I think they're willing to give us a room. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Right on. And then with respect to Ray's comment on a virtual event, I mean, I have never run a virtual conference for a day.
Yeah, no,
it could be an experiment that fails spectacularly, like who knows, right? But I mean, I think that's the only risk, because I'm not really worried about the room either. If the whole event is canceled, if things don't die down, then that's the big risk, and people are still grounded, for lack of a better word. So rather than sort of canceling it, if the summit gets canceled, should we try doing it virtually and see how it goes? But
yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure what to think of the virtual events. I'm getting roped into a few of them. The VMware is doing one that they want me to give a talk at that's like a 24-hour thing, which I think is insane. I'm just going to do my part. I don't plan to stay for the whole 24 hours.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be operated by different people in the different regions, but the idea is they would have something for everybody, and you know, and across the time zones. So there are loads of these virtual events starting to kick up. Google Next is doing theirs, and I think it's free actually. So it might be interesting as we learn more about these. We could decide. My gut feel on the virtual events is that I don't think that they're going to work particularly well, right? Like I don't want to sit in this chair for 8 hours and watch presentations. Like I'm not sure that the whole, you know, track, this is the way we do a conference, but you're going to do it sitting on your butt in a chair. I don't think that works particularly well. But that's not to say that we couldn't record, you know, we couldn't have people record their presentations, put them up on the website and let people watch them in their own time. Or we could do it something interactively and do like, you know, one every day for 2 weeks. Or, I mean, there are lots of things we can think about. I think right now we should assume that we're going to be there face to face at the event. There's a chance that they could postpone it instead of canceling it like they did with KubeCon Amsterdam, where it's going to be postponed until July or August. So I think we wait and see what happens with the event and then decide. But yeah, I'm not convinced that the virtual event thing works.
No, I mean, I agree. The format's got to be different. If it's just 8 hours straight of like slides, then yeah, it's not likely that I'll sit through more than 2 hours of it. But
no. I mean, I had a 3-hour to-do group meeting yesterday, and that was rough.
Yeah,
and it was a really good meeting with great people, but it's hard.
Right. Yeah, I mean, internally we had our like all employee get together canceled. It was to be in 2 weeks. So we're organizing something like slightly differently just for our team, not the whole company. So we're like a very different format. We have breaks so that people can walk away from their desk and all that. But yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. John, I think for now, let's just move forward, assume that we're going to have the room and the event will still happen. And then if it doesn't, then I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Although I have to say, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm not convinced they're going to be able to pull this off, especially not in the US. They're not the US is not handling things particularly well right now compared to other countries. I'm kind of happy that I didn't get to go to the conferences and got to come home, because things are a lot better here than in the US.
Yeah. I mean, scale was interesting. It was just like, I've never seen an event where just schedule changes like every 15 minutes because they find out.
Oh
like,
my God, I felt so bad
yeah.
for Elon and crew. That was.
No, he was just like, he apologized to me. I apologized for this chaos. I said, well, you didn't cause the virus as far as I know. So like, you don't have anything to apologize for, but they were still on their feet. So kudos to them. But yeah, it was hard.